Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Ever feel like you just completely fumble through conversations?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're just not connecting? It turns out there's actually a science to this whole conversation thing,
Uh-huh.
and we are diving deep into a book called Talk, The New Science of Conversation and the Art of Being Ourselves by Alison Woodbrooks.
Cool.
It's a really cool blend of science and self-help. So if you want to run log the secrets to better communication and all that jazz,
I'm in.
hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into all these cool topics. You can find a link to the book down in the description.
Awesome.
And it's just packed with all this research and practical tips on how to have those more enjoyable and meaningful conversations. You know, the ones that we all crave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, and what's so interesting is that this book, it kind of reframes the whole idea of conversation as like a coordination game.
okay.
Like The Prisoner's Dilemma. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it really challenges this idea that talking should be effortless, because there's so much going on beneath the surface.
Right. Yeah. So what do you mean by a coordination game?
Hmm.
That sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah, well, think about it. Every conversation involves this constant back and forth of reading the other person's
Oh,
cues,
yeah.
right? You're adjusting your own behavior and you're trying to achieve your own conversational goals at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're essentially trying to coordinate your actions with this other person, even though you can't really fully know what their intentions are.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like a dance where you're both trying to lead but also follow at the same time.
Yes, exactly. And the book even goes deeper and it introduces this concept of talk maxims,
Okay.
topics, asking, levity, and kindness.
Okay.
And these are guiding principles, I guess you could say, to help you navigate this conversational dance.
I love a good acronym.
Yeah.
Let's start with topics. What makes choosing the right topic so crucial?
Okay, well, think back to a conversation you had that just felt super flat.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Chances are the topic just wasn't engaging for either person. And Brooks really emphasizes that the choice of topic is what sets the tone for the entire conversation. It dictates the flow, the depth, everything. She even shares this story about a guy named Mike who uses podcasts like This American Life as inspiration to find interesting stories and conversation starters.
Well, that's smart. So instead of just defaulting to oh, hey, how's the weather? You're saying come armed with some, I don't know, conversation kindling.
Yeah, exactly. And she even introduces this concept called a topic pyramid.
Okay.
And it basically illustrates how conversations can move from those surface level small talk
Right.
to this more tailored talk and then eventually into deep, meaningful discussions.
Okay.
So it's not just about finding any topic, but it's about understanding how your partner relates to it, their experience, their expertise, even just their general interest level in that topic.
Yeah.
For example, there's this one speed dating scenario in the book where one person just gives constant one-word responses.
Oh, yeah.
And it totally shuts down the conversation. And it just shows how quickly things can go south if you're not really considering your partner's cues and adjusting your approach.
Yeah, it's such a good point. It's not about dominating the conversation with your own interests, but creating a space where, both people feel heard
Absolutely.
and they're engaged.
Yes. And that brings us to the second talk maxim, which is asking.
Okay.
And this might surprise you, but research has shown that people actually ask way fewer questions than they think they do.
Really?
Yeah, we often just get so caught up sharing our own thoughts and opinions, what we forget to actually draw out the other person's perspective.
Wow, that's so surprising. So, are you saying that just by simply asking more questions, we can instantly make our conversations more engaging?
It's a very simple but powerful shift. The book even talks about this classroom demonstration where students are trying to win a $100 bill,
Okay.
and they get so focused on trying to persuade the professor that they completely missed the obvious solution.
What was it?
Just ask for it.
Oh, it's like we overcomplicate things when the answer's right in front of us.
Exactly. Now, more questions, like you said, generally do lead to richer conversations, but it's not just about quantity. Brooks talks about these things called boom rusks.
Boomeresques?
Yeah, boomerascus. They're basically like those questions that are immediately followed by the asker just talking about themselves.
Right.
And they completely disregard whatever the answer was. Like, they're just using the question as a launch pad for their own monologue.
Oh, I know those types. You ask them a question and they just like steer the conversation right back to themselves.
Yes.
Not exactly a recipe for connection.
Right. And then you also have those, like, gotcha questions, the ones that are designed to, like, trap someone or make them look bad.
Oh, yeah?
So the key really is to ask questions with a genuine desire to understand, to manage the conversation flow,
Okay.
express interest, or strengthen the relationship.
Okay.
Brooks even talks about zero questioners or ZQs. You see these a lot, especially in like dating scenarios.
Oh, interesting.
And like never asking questions can be a huge red flag. It just makes you seem self-absorbed and it prevents any real connection from actually forming. And insights from matchmaker Rachel Greenwald, she highlights why this is such a problem.
That makes sense. If you only talk about yourself and show absolutely no interest in the other person, it's hard to build any rapport.
Right.
So it's about quality questions.
Yes.
Not just like a barrage of them.
Open-ended questions that give your partner more space to actually respond are generally better. Remember, it's about a back-and-forth exchange, not an interrogation.
I love that analogy. Okay, so we've got the topic nailed down. We're asking engaging questions.
Uh-huh.
What's next?
Well, now it's time to sprinkle in some levity.
Okay.
You know that feeling of awkward silence?
Oh, yeah.
That we all dread? It's natural to want to fill those gaps, and that's what humor comes in.
Oh, right. I feel like I always overthink jokes,
Yeah.
and I just end up saying nothing. Is there a secret to being funnier in conversations?
Brooks uses this great example from a speed dating conversation, and both participants were feeling awkward, but their shared awkwardness sparked laughter and connection.
Oh, that's interesting.
It shows how, like, vulnerability and humor can really break down barriers and create that sense of camaraderie.
So it's not about, like, being a stand-up comedian, but using humor to create a more relaxed and, like, enjoyable atmosphere.
Exactly. And she even connects this to Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So it's basically how positive emotions, like laughter, broaden our thinking and help us build social bonds. Research has shown that people actually overestimate how often humor goes wrong.
Really?
And they underestimate its success rate. Like, we're more afraid of making a bad joke than we are of missing out on the positive effects of levity.
So maybe we should just worry less about being perfectly witty
Yeah.
and just try to inject some fun into our conversations.
Absolutely. And the book even shares some practical tips,
Oh, cool.
like the Seinfeld strategy of exaggerating small details to make them funnier, or like using self-deprecating humor.
Yeah, yeah.
And remember, laughter is contagious, so like supporting others' humor, even if it falls flat, encourages them to keep trying.
Oh, that's a good point. It's like creating a safe space for everyone to just be their goofy selves.
Exactly. And even if you're not like naturally a jokester, simply acknowledging a failed joke
Uh-huh.
with like a recovery line can make you more relatable. The book even talks about a guy named Dave who uses like repeated compliments, even if they seem insincere, to warm up the room and connect with people. It might not be everyone's style, but it highlights the power of positive reinforcement.
That's true. Maybe you'll remember how you make them feel. Okay, we've covered topics, asking and levity. What's the final maxim?
Kindness.
Kindness.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Kindness in conversation. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So Brooke starts off with this personal anecdote about how she unintentionally offended her student.
No.
It's a powerful reminder that even well-intentioned people make mistakes.
Yeah.
And kindness is crucial for navigating differences in like identity, beliefs, and just like general understanding.
So it's about being mindful of the other person's perspective, creating a space where everyone feels respected, even if you disagree.
Precisely. She links this to research on receptiveness in disagreements. It's not about avoiding conflict, but using language that encourages this open dialogue.
Oh, okay.
And the book even gives a receptiveness recipe to help us navigate those like tricky conversations where strong opinions are involved.
Ooh, a recipe for better conversations. I'm all ears.
Okay, so
Tell me more about this receptiveness recipe and how we can use kindness to have more productive and meaningful conversations.
yeah, so this receptiveness recipe you mentioned, it's really powerful for those conversations where you might not see eye to eye with the other person.
Right.
It basically involves at least key ingredients. First, you got to acknowledge the other person's perspective, then find some common ground, and then validate their feelings, be cautious about your own claims, and show a genuine desire to learn.
Okay.
So it's all about creating a space where both people feel heard.
Right.
respected, even if you don't ultimately agree.
That sounds incredibly valuable, especially in today's world. It just feels like everyone's dug into their own trenches, you know?
Absolutely. Think about conversations about really sensitive topics, differing opinions about public reactions to certain event. The book highlights how easily things can just escalate when people feel dismissed
Yeah.
or judged. The recipe helps you approach those conversations
Okay.
with more empathy
Yeah.
and understanding.
It's like shifting from a battle of opinions to a shared exploration of perspectives.
Precisely. And of course, kindness also involves apologies.
Right.
You might think apologies are simple, but Brooks actually reveals the complexity of them. She even draws some insights from parole hearings.
Parole hearings, that's not what I was expecting.
It's super fascinating. Research has shown that apologies that are focused on remorse, acknowledging harm, and promising change are far more effective than those that just offer excuses
Okay.
or downplay the impact of whatever happened. It makes you realize just how much weight a sincere apology really carries.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like a genuine apology focuses on making amends,
Mm-hmm.
showing that you've actually learned from your mistake.
Exactly. Think about the apologies that you've received. Which ones felt truly sincere and helped repair the relationship? It was probably those where the person took responsibility, showed genuine remorse. The book even uses this example of a particularly bad apology from a former CEO after a major oil spill, and it just completely lacked sincerity
Oh,
and focused more on minimizing the company's liability than acknowledging the suffering it caused.
it's a reminder that a poorly crafted apology can actually do more harm than good. So how do we apply this to like our everyday lives? How can we become better at apologizing?
Well, Brooks provides some excellent advice. Be specific about what you're apologizing for.
Okay.
Express remorse without making it about yourself. And genuinely commit to changing your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the most powerful apologies are offered without even being asked for. The book even shares a story about two sisters navigating past hurts and misunderstandings.
Oh, wow.
And even though it's a tough conversation, their willingness to be receptive, apologize, helps mend their relationship.
It's a beautiful example of how vulnerability and accountability can just pave the way for healing
Yes?
and a deeper connection.
Exactly. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about those conversations that involve more than just two people. Group dynamics bring a whole new set of challenges to the table.
Yeah, group conversations can definitely feel like a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that we should be mindful of when navigating those situations?
Well, Brooks highlights the impact of status hierarchies. Within groups,
Okay,
status can be fluid, changing based on context, topic, and even who's present.
right.
She shares an anecdote about attending a party and talking to another professor. It was a comfortable back and forth until someone who clearly admired that professor joined them,
Oh, yeah.
and she felt invisible.
Oh, I've been there. It's like you suddenly become aware of your place in the pecking order,
Right.
and it's so hard to find your voice again.
It's such a common experience that people in lower status positions, they might hesitate to contribute, fearing that they'll be judged or dismissed. But Brooks emphasizes that everyone's perspective is valuable, and silencing voices based on this perceived status can actually deprive the group
Yeah.
of diverse insights.
So how do we make sure everyone feels comfortable contributing to the conversation, regardless of their perceived status?
Well, that's where the concept of airtime comes in.
Okay.
Airtime isn't just about who talks the most.
Right.
It's also about who's being listened to and whose perspectives are actually valued.
Okay.
High-status individuals often dominate these conversations, while those in lower positions might struggle to even get a word in edgewise.
Right. That makes sense. It's about creating a space where everyone's voice is heard and respected,
Yes,
not just the loudest or most assertive person in the room.
exactly. And it's not just about personalities or preferences.
Right.
Think about gender dynamics in meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Often, unconscious biases can influence who gets to speak and for how long.
Right.
It's a reminder that the talk maxims aren't just about individual self-improvement. They're about creating a more equitable and inclusive society
Yeah.
where everyone has a chance to participate fully in conversations.
It's like those talk maxims are more than just conversation tips.
Mhm.
They're a roadmap for building better relationships
Yes.
and community.
Precisely. And Brooks doesn't just highlight the challenges, she offers practical strategies for navigating them. She emphasizes the importance of developing a stewardship mindset.
Okay.
Think of yourself as the host of a dinner party,
Okay.
ensuring everyone feels comfortable, has a good time, and contributes to the overall energy of the gathering.
I love that analogy. It takes the pressure off of trying to be the perfect conversationalist and instead focuses on creating a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere.
Exactly. It's about being mindful of the group's needs and ensuring everyone feels seen and heard. A conversational steward might encourage quieter members to speak up, redirect the conversation if it becomes dominated by one person, or even introduce structured conversation rituals to ensure more balanced participation.
Okay.
Imagine like a family tradition where everyone takes turns sharing reflections or something like that. It creates this intentional space for connection and ensures everyone feels valued.
It's like you're setting the table for a good conversation,
Yeah,
creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts and perspectives.
exactly. And this applies to disagreements as well. Differences in opinions and beliefs are inevitable, but they don't have to derail the conversation or damage relationships. Brooks introduces the concept of conversational receptiveness,
Okay.
which is the ability to engage with those opposing viewpoints without shutting down or becoming defensive.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether,
Right.
but approaching it with a more open, understanding mindset.
Exactly. And it turns out the language we use during disagreements really impacts how the other person feels and how likely they are to be persuaded by our perspective.
So how do we become more receptive in those conversations where our opinions clash? Is there a specific approach we can take?
Well, remember that receptiveness recipe we talked about.
Uh-huh.
It's all about acknowledging the other person's viewpoint,
Okay.
finding common ground, validating their feelings, and showing a genuine desire to learn. It's about creating a space where both people feel safe enough to express themselves authentically, even if they don't ultimately agree.
That sounds incredibly challenging, especially when you're dealing with, like, deeply held beliefs
Right.
or sensitive topics.
It definitely takes effort and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones. But Brooks provides some compelling examples to illustrate how powerful this approach can be. She contrasts two conversations about public reactions to police confrontations. One person is dismissive and judgmental, while the other uses the receptiveness recipe to acknowledge the other person's concerns and offer a different perspective. And it's so clear which approach is more likely to lead to a respectful and productive dialogue.
It highlights how even in those tense conversations, we can choose to approach them with empathy and a desire to understand rather than just simply trying to prove our point. It's about building bridges rather than burning them.
Precisely. And that's such a crucial aspect of kindness in conversation. It's not about pretending to agree or avoiding conflict.
Right.
It's about engaging with others in a way that fosters understanding, respect,
Yeah,
and connection.
I love that. It's about recognizing the shared humanity in every interaction,
Yes,
even when we disagree.
exactly. And that actually leads us to the final section of the book where Brooks challenges this common misconception about conversation. She calls it the myth of suckiness.
The myth of suckiness. What is that?
It's that pervasive feeling that we're just not good at conversation. We tend to dwell on those awkward moments or perceived failures while overlooking our successes and the inherent complexity of this art form. We call it conversation.
I think most of us have felt that way at some point. We overthink our every word, replay embarrassing moments in our heads, and compare ourselves to those who just seem effortlessly charming
Right.
and witty.
Exactly. But Brooks reminds us that conversation is a collaborative effort, and even the most skilled communicators make mistakes
Yeah.
and have those like off moments. She encourages us to be kind to ourselves, embrace those imperfections,
Mhm.
and focus on this continuous learning and growth.
So it's about shifting our perspective from self-criticism to self-compassion, recognizing that we're all works in progress when it comes to conversation.
Precisely. And she even cites research showing that people underestimate their conversational abilities compared to other skills. We're often much harsher on ourselves than we need to be
Right.
when it comes to communication.
It's like we have this internal critic whispering all those negative thoughts in our ear,
Yes,
making us doubt our ability to connect with others.
exactly. And Brooks encourages us to challenge those negative thoughts and celebrate our conversational successes,
Okay.
no matter how small they may seem. Every meaningful conversation, every thoughtful question, every heartfelt story shared, it's a step in the right direction. It's about recognizing that even those seemingly ordinary conversations can be opportunities for growth, connection, even joy.
It's a beautiful reminder that every interaction is a chance to practice those talk maxims,
Yes.
refine our skills, and connect with others on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up our deep dive into talk, Brooks leaves us with some powerful calls to action. She encourages us to reach out to someone we've lost touch with, to apologize for past hurts, to engage in those difficult conversations we've been avoiding, and to continue practicing those talk maxims in all of our interactions.
So it's about stepping outside of our comfort zones,
Mm-hmm.
embracing vulnerability, and committing to becoming more mindful and intentional in our communication. But those efforts can lead to deeper connections
Yes.
and more fulfilling relationships.
Precisely. And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of Brooke's suggestions for continuing this journey of conversational exploration and growth.
Okay.
We'll discover practical tips for practicing those talk maxims, experimenting with different communication styles, and deepening our understanding of this incredible art form we call conversation.
Welcome back. I am so ready to explore those practical tips
Yeah,
and exercises that you mentioned for improving our conversation skills. It feels like we've covered so much already, but
I know, right?
I'm really excited to see how we can actually put all these insights into action.
Well, you're in for a treat because Brooks offers all these conversation experiments to help you apply those talk maxims in real life and really get a deeper understanding of how communication works. These aren't just theoretical concepts. This is stuff you can actually start using today.
I love that idea of experimenting, with different approaches. It takes the pressure off and lets us see conversation as a playful process
Right.
of discovery.
Exactly. One that really stood out to me is this one called the limited listening exercise. It's where you have a video call with someone and you spend part of the time with the video on and then part of it off.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I've definitely noticed a difference in my own behavior on video calls.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the camera's on or off, sometimes I'm more self-conscious
Yeah.
or less engaged if I know they can't see me.
Totally. And this experiment really highlights how much we rely on those nonverbal cues like facial expressions and body language and eye contact to really communicate and understand the meaning. And when you limit those cues, you have to work harder to get your message across.
Yeah, it makes you realize how much we just take those nonverbal cues for granted. We're constantly reading those subtle signals without even thinking about it.
Yeah. And Brooks even suggests taking this experiment a step further, trying it in person.
Whoa.
Imagine having a conversation where everyone closes their eyes.
Okay.
For part of it, might feel weird at first, but it forces you to focus on the other person's words and their tone of voice.
That sounds kind of intriguing. I could see how it would heighten your awareness
Yeah,
of those subtle vocal nuances, those things that we might otherwise miss.
exactly. It's like a sensory deprivation for
Yeah.
conversation.
Ooh, I like that.
And then there's the experiment of companionable silence.
Oh, okay.
And Brooks encourages you to think about those people in your life where you feel comfortable sharing silence, and whether there are other people that you haven't explored that possibility with yet. We often feel this need to fill every silence with words, but she argues that shared silence can actually be really powerful.
I love that. It's about shifting our perspective on silence, seeing it not as this awkward void to fill, but as an opportunity for deeper presence and connection.
Exactly. Think about those moments when you're with someone that you're totally comfortable with.
Yeah.
And you can just be together without constantly talking. There's a sense of intimacy and shared understanding. And Brooks says that cultivating that comfort with silence can really strengthen your relationships.
Yeah. It's acknowledging that sometimes words just aren't necessary. It's about being present
Mm-hmm.
with the other person and allowing space for those unspoken connections to form.
Exactly. And for those who are ready for a truly immersive experience, Brooks even suggests trying a Vipassana silent retreat.
Whoa, a silent retreat. That's pretty intense.
It is. But even if you're not ready for that, experimenting with shorter periods of silence can be really insightful. Start by just noticing those moments when you feel that urge to fill the silence and challenge yourself to just be present.
Right, like a mindfulness practice for conversation.
Yes.
Instead of just constantly chattering, we're learning to appreciate those spaces between the words.
Exactly. And that ties back to that myth of suckiness that we talked about. If we're always worried about saying the right thing or filling every silence, we might miss out on the richness of nonverbal communication and the power of just being present.
Yeah. It's about giving ourselves permission to just be, even in those moments of quiet.
Exactly. Brooks also offers some thought-provoking experiments related to apologies and feedback.
Okay.
One that I found particularly interesting was the feedback challenge. She encourages you to seek out constructive feedback from two people that you trust, specifically about areas where you know you could improve. Now, I know this can be a little daunting, but feedback, even when it's hard to hear, is a gift.
That's true. It's about approaching feedback with a growth mindset, seeing it as an opportunity to learn
Yes.
and become better versions of ourselves.
Exactly. And she really emphasizes the importance of how you frame your request for feedback. Like, instead of just saying, "How am I doing?" try saying something like, "I'm really working on getting better in this area. I would really love you honest feedback on how I'm doing." It just shows that you're genuinely open
Right.
to learning and growing.
It's about creating that space where the other person feels comfortable sharing their honest perspective without feeling judged.
Exactly. And then there's the relationship reboot experiment. This one challenges you to reach out to someone you've lost touch with, or someone that, like, you have a relationship with that's kind of hurting. Now, this one can be emotionally challenging, especially if there's unresolved conflict or hurt feelings, but she reminds us that relationships are precious and often worth the effort to repair.
It's about taking that first step towards reconciliation,
Mm-hmm.
even if it feels really scary or uncertain.
Exactly. And Brooks encourages you to use those talk maxims to guide your interactions, focusing on empathy, understanding, and a willingness to take responsibility for your role in the breakdown.
Right.
It's about approaching the conversation with a desire to mend fences and rebuild trust.
It's like extending an olive branch, and
Yeah.
opening the door for healing and forgiveness.
Precisely. And what I think is so inspiring about all of Brooks's conversation experiments is that they're not just about learning these new techniques, they're really about expanding our capacity for connection, empathy, and vulnerability. They're about embracing all that messiness and complexity of human communication and recognizing that even the most difficult conversations can be opportunities for growth and transformation.
It's like we're shifting from seeing conversations as a transaction to see them as like a transformative experience, a way to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. And Brooks concludes the book with a reminder that conversation isn't just a means to an end. It's really an essential part of what makes us human. It's how we share our stories, how we build relationships, create communities, and make sense of the world. It's a gift, a privilege, and a responsibility.
It's a beautiful reminder that every conversation, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, has the potential to touch lives and make a difference.
Exactly. And it's up to us to use that gift wisely, compassionately, and create a world where everyone feels heard, valued, and connected.
What an incredible journey this deep dive into talk has been.
I know, right?
I feel like I've learned so much, not just about the science of conversation, but about the power of human connection, and the importance of approaching our interactions with intention and kindness.
Me too. And I hope our listeners feel the same way. If you haven't already, definitely check out Talk and explore some of those conversation experiments yourself. You might be surprised what you discover, not only about conversation, but about yourself and the people around you.
Absolutely. And be sure to share your favorite insights and those aha moments from the book down in the comments below. We love hearing from you guys and continuing the conversation.
As always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep talking, keep learning, and keep connecting.
See you next time. TTI.